Um, so
Okay.
can you see me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is the first time I've ever done this. Usually my um, logistics guy, streamer guy does it. He's the pro.
Okay.
So um, I can start anytime you want. This is going to be pretty relaxed, I hope.
Okay.
You said you had a bunch of art direction stuff you could talk about and stuff. So
Yeah.
probably just start with general interview questions like who are you and why are you here, that kind of stuff.
All
Cool.
right. That sounds
Uh,
good.
so yeah, Joey, just hook me up here. I just hit start streaming, right? I believe we may be live. It may take about 7 seconds to actually work, but
All right.
I guess we'll know in a couple minutes. Yeah, we're good, man. Cool. So, Isaac,
Hello. How you
who
doing,
are
Ed?
you and what do you do?
So I am Isaac Stewart. I work for Brandon Sanderson at Dragonsteel Entertainment. Um, I worked in video games for quite a while before that. I worked in book design. Uh, but now I'm the art director at Dragonsteel. That means I get to hire artists. I get to work on designing the leather-bound books that we make each year. Um,
Hold on one
and there's a
second, dude. I think
lot
your
more.
audio is not coming through, so give me a second. I gotta fix
Okay,
this.
sounds good.
Joey's gonna come over and help me out.
Okay.
Right. Go ahead and say something, dude.
Hello. Can you
Oh,
hear me?
nice. Well, I can hear you, but the stream
Good.
can't.
Okay.
Try that one. Say it again.
Okay. Hello there. Testing, testing.
All right. I think we got you, dude.
Okay.
Thanks, Joey. He's gonna go check it real quick before we jump back in.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. We're fixed.
All right.
All right,
Sounds
good stuff.
Okay. You
Yeah,
ready
man.
for this
Sorry
again?
about that.
Okay.
Absolutely. So,
Take two.
Isaac, who are you and why are you here?
So I'm Isaac Stewart. I am Brandon Sanderson's art director. I do a lot of different things for the company. Before I came on board, I worked as an animator in video games, and I also worked in book design.
Would I know any of the video games you worked on?
I worked on the first several iterations of the animation system for uh, now it's out of my head. Twisted
You've been with
Metal.
Brandon a long time.
Yeah, Twisted Metal for the PS3. I did do some work on Disney Infinity. So I didn't finish up everything on Twisted Metal. I wound up halfway through the project going to another company, but I did work on that. I worked on Disney Infinity, Kingdom for Keflings, a bunch of other smaller games.
Wait, you worked on Kingdom for Keyflings? My
Yes.
daughter would love that. So
Yep.
it was funny. We do these little videos called "I Am the Gamerati," and it's people talking about something that happened during or because of gaming. And when my daughter was like 5, she did one, and all she talked about was how she likes Kingdom for Keyflings. And
Oh,
it
that
was
is
like it was adorable.
that's funny. Well, I'm glad that we had a fan on that one. It actually did really well for quite a while. Loved working for Wahoo Studios. They were great people and still friends. So, um,
How did you meet Brandon?
what's that?
How did you meet Brandon?
So, kind of in a roundabout way, uh, we were both at a magazine at BYU called The Leading Edge, but I didn't go as often. He was the editor. I met him once or twice. He didn't remember me, but I met a lot of the other people that worked at the magazine who now some of them are my coworkers here at Dragonsteel.
Nice.
But I went on, I stopped kind of going to the magazine at some point, finished my schooling, went on to start working and decided that I needed to go back to school for optometry. Don't ask me why.
Why? No, I'm just kidding.
Again, I just didn't know if there was going to be a future in art for me. And so I went back to school for optometry. I already had a lot of the prerequisites because I tried a stint at dentistry for a few years before going into animation. And so I went back to school, decided to take the science fiction writing class again at BYU. And by this time, Brandon was teaching it. He and I were closer in age than the other students there. This was like his second year teaching it. And we just clicked. We became friends. One night at dinner, because we would go out after the class and eat on those nights. And one night at dinner, I was drawing on the tablecloth at a macaroni grill, you know, where they give you the crayons and things.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I didn't know you were an artist," because I was going to school for optometry at the time. I wasn't really advertising that I was an artist.
Sure.
So doodling on the tablecloth, he said, "Hey, want to do maps for my next book?" And by this time, Elantris wasn't out yet, but it was about to come out.
Okay.
And so I said, "Sure, I'll do your maps." He didn't know that I'd been doing fantasy maps, you know, on the side just for fun for quite a while. So
did
it was
you
kind
do
of
the maps
serendipitous.
of like Luthadel and stuff like that? Like you were the one that kind of laid that stuff down?
Yep, that was me.
You want to
Yep.
show us some early map stuff from
Do you want to
Isaac?
see some early map stuff?
Yes, I want to see some
know?
early map stuff. Oh, I don't care where. I mean, you can show us something that you want to show us. Something easier to find, maybe.
Well, I have it right here. I prepared some things, but I did not prepare Luthadel maps. But
Right.
I know where they're at because I saw them last night.
Cool.
So
So when you do it, you know how to share your screen.
let's see.
So in order to share
This
your
little
screen,
screen thing. Okay.
yeah, you just at the bottom there's two little boxes, and you just hit share screen.
Okay. It is making me give Skype. Skype will not be able to record the contents of your screen until it is quit. Really?
You're fine.
You want me to quit?
I don't want you to quit. Just go ahead, share your screen. We're streaming.
Well,
We're good to go.
it's making me do. It's making me change the settings on my computer for some reason.
Why don't you do this? You can pass the file to me over the chat, and I'll just show it. How does that work?
I'd rather just be able to show them here.
All right. We'll try it and see what happens.
Okay. Let's try this again.
There you go.
Is that working?
Yeah, it's working.
Right. Okay, so I'm gonna start pulling some things over here. Let me see if I can find some of the Luthadel stuff.
Or any map, honestly. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be Luthadel. I think people are just interested in your work.
Which completely floors me.
When you do good work.
Well, thank you. So let's pull up this one for now. That's strange. Okay, is that showing up?
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. I'm going to drag some of these things over to another screen so it's a little bit easier to see.
Well, when you drag it to another screen, I won't be able to see it.
Well,
oh, gotcha.
Yeah, that way there's not all this stuff over here.
Cool.
All right, so here's the Phaedrix map. I don't know if you guys, that's even spelled wrong, spelled differently. This was a sketch in a sketchbook. A lot of things, as I was reading the books, would just show up in sketchbooks. Mm-hmm. And so this is Phaedrix from book 3, I think, which later on the spelling was changed. The orientation of the map was changed around. But that's normally how my maps start. They're just little thumbnails.
You even
Right.
have a little legend there at the bottom that has no labels. One, two, three,
Yeah,
four. Yeah.
yeah, that exactly. Um, I'm trying to see if I can find, like I did by hand a map of Luthadel,
Okay.
and then I scanned that and used it for the base of everything else. And I just am trying to find it. That's not one of the files I had together, but it's pretty interesting. I
So this
think
Phaedrex one that you have here on the screen, how long ago did you sketch this out on a
so
half
when
a piece of paper?
2005, six, probably this was probably 2007.
Wow.
And I mean, it was probably an inch by 2 inches at the most.
Yeah, it looks tiny.
It's tiny. That's why it's kind of showing up funny. Um, Here's an interesting thing. At one point, we were going to do little sketches in Mistborn, and then we decided on just symbols.
Okay.
But they were going to be little sketches in front of the parts.
Hmm.
And here was a sketch that we were working on of, here's all these ska people around crowding through the buildings, and then here's Kelsier facing down the Lord Ruler. So kind of funny. I mean, I'm probably the first person to have ever done fan art for Mistborn, because
At Macaroni Grill.
well, I haven't read Mistborn yet. Just because nobody else had read the books yet.
Sure.
So
So you were talking about the symbols and how you guys were going to do sketches. So how did you move away from sketches into the current symbology that we have?
So I honestly think that I just wasn't good enough an artist at the time, maybe not even now, to pull off the sort of illustrative thing that we wanted to do. So it kind of morphed into symbols instead.
Okay. So
we
do you have
knew-
anything do you have an example of that you can show?
We knew that we wanted to do. We knew that we wanted an Allomantic table of the elements. We wanted something that was going to be like the chemistry table of the elements, the periodic table. And because of all of the metals and the things that Brandon had figured out with the Mistborn world. But he handed me the manuscript and he said, here, read this book, make a periodic table for it. And as we were doing that, we figured, well, we need to come up with a symbol for all of these different elements for the table. And that just eventually morphed into, hey, this illustration thing isn't quite working out. And I'll show you some examples of those illustrations and where we went.
Sure.
Why don't I do that right now? So
why don't you do that so there's something on the screen? Although the mountain's very pretty.
Oh yeah, there you go.
While we're standing.
Let's put some things on the screen over there. So I was telling you that they were going to be these little scenes, right? So here is a little scene, again, of Kelsier facing down the Lord Ruler. And at the time, I kind of pictured the Lord Ruler as this sort of Dracula-like character. In my head, I was thinking very gothic for Mistborn.
Okay.
And so, the Lord Ruler looked very, like Dracula, which I still kind of like that feel because he's this ancient immortal who's preying basically, on the people and lording over a certain area. He's very much a Dracula-like character in some ways. Mm-hmm. So here's, Kelsier's been speared right there. This one's probably the very first drawing of Kelsier ever.
Oh, nice.
These are just really rough.
Right.
Here was another shot of. This was, I think, from maybe Spook's point of view, from the rooftops of Luthadel, looking down on Kelsier.
Can you make that one a little bigger? Is it able to be bigger? look at that one a little bit. Oh, nice. And so that's all the like the crowds just gathered around.
Yeah, the crowds gathered around. Of course, it wouldn't be a perfect circle like that, but I don't know. I wasn't thinking about that at the time.
Sure.
Um, let's see, what else can I show that's sort of in this vein while we have these up? So we were thinking about having some inquisitors and things like that as symbols. And so here I was drawing dudes with nails through their heads. Sometimes these happened while I was sitting in church doodling, and creepy dudes to be drawing in church, and this lady would sit next to me and look at them and be like, "What are you drawing?"
She's
Anyway,
like,
later,
the nails go in the hands, man. Haven't you read? Right?
yeah. What are you drawing?
You're
Nails.
like, I was reading a different book. I'm just sorry about that.
Yeah.
They go in the
So,
eyes in the book I was reading, right?
so I eventually introduced her to Brandon, and she married him. But at the
Well,
time,
there you go.
what's up with this creepy stuff you're drawing? I'm sure that I didn't make people. I don't know. Hopefully, I didn't make people too uncomfortable with my weird drawings. So here's another Inquisitor, and you can
the
see,
ministry tattoos, yeah.
I'm trying to figure out maybe the ministry tattoos could work as some kind of design element. I showed Brandon these sketches and said, what if one of the tattoos is red and it means the misting the misting power that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually wrote that into the book. But you can see up here in this area, can you see where my cursor is?
Sure, I can. If you want,
Yeah.
you can zoom in on that a little bit.
So
sure.
you can see here that I'm starting to play with symbols, right?
Sure.
This,
I like the one that looks like a guy with a sword.
yeah, that was me saying, hey, maybe that could be the symbol for the hero of ages. I don't know. So
Mm-hmm.
just another guy with nails through his head trying to figure out tattoos. Then I've got notes and things on the side, but here we go. We see that I'm trying.
There's the red one that you were talking about.
Yeah, here's that red thing going on. These tattoos. The Inquisitors start looking more like something from the whatever that's called, with the Samurai Jack style. I don't know, but this is where the symbols started to grow out of.
Oh, I see. If you look at the on the bottom, second one from the left, if you zoom in on that a little bit, it does start to take on a lot of the characters of some of the metal symbols. That looks, that's starting to look a lot like the symbology that you ended up with.
Yeah, it's kind of moving in that direction. Here, I'll show you a few more things on this. This may very well be the first drawing of Vin ever. I don't know why she has leather boots on. I don't know.
She's a pirate, right?
Yeah, she's sort
she's
of
got pirate boots.
But that's probably, I started drawing Vin, and I actually have some sketches that were done about this time, and this is before the books were ever even out. And it actually works toward the Brandon's skill as a writer, that when even before the books were out and I'm doing drawings of Vin, they actually look like the Vin that everybody else is drawing right now.
That's awesome. Hey, so by the way, Shadow Saber wants to know if you can have all your drawings.
Actually, a collector, the reason I have scans for all of these is a collector already snatched these up. So they're in an archive somewhere.
Okay.
I don't know.
There's a Scadrial archive, for the ages.
Yep, there was a world hopper came to me and said, "Can I put these in an archive on Silverlight?" And I said, "How can I say no to that, right?"
Right, exactly. You're like, and by the way, can I visit sometime?
That was payment.
Yeah.
Take me through the cognitive realm.
Okay, so I think sometimes people don't realize how what they have in their hands grows into from a early concept, and it might be interesting for people to learn that the symbology grew out of tattoos, really, right? Like
some of it did, some of it did. And we'll
yeah,
get to that. That was one direction that I was coming from. The other direction I was coming from was these drawings weren't quite working how I wanted them to work. And then the other direction was we were working on the table of the elements.
okay. Do you have any of that?
Yeah, I do. I am. Whoop.
Great. So now we've got your bank statements. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Now here's this is where I thought I was going to go with the symbols.
Okay.
Right there.
They're a lot more complex back then.
They were. This was growing out of the tattoo thing. Okay, here's the.
And this is very much more like what I expect from a ferrochemy symbol now, as opposed to an allomancy symbol.
Yeah, they're a little more angular.
Mm-hmm.
So here's that drawing of Vin that I did in like 2005, and you can see that it's very much how people draw Vin now.
Sure.
I
the
was
bob
also
haircut and everything.
Yeah. Oh, whoops. Here's a Inquisitor, creepy Inquisitor.
You know that Inquisitor, and put that one back up for a second. What movie does that remind you of? Like if you had a movie that.
Nowadays, I'd be like, oh, is that Freddy Krueger? Is that
what
you're
about
thinking?
the classical Nosferatu movie?
Oh,
like
you're right.
the
Yeah.
old vampire movie, and you said that you kind of pictured the little ruler as kind of a gothic Dracula type character. So I guess it makes sense that the Inquisitors would kind of have that same motif.
Yeah. And I think that was all unconscious at the time. These are just all things that just weren't working.
Mm-hmm.
So this, I got it.
I like that. I really like the way that's.
So that's the point where Kelsier has already stabbed the Lord Ruler once,
mm-hmm.
and he's triumphant for a minute, and then the Lord Ruler pulls the spear out and then stabs Kelsier.
So we have a question from Hero Wannabe. He's got lots of them, I'm sure. So pause. We'll talk about this map in a second.
Okay.
He said, and maybe you address it later, maybe you address it now. He was wondering if there was any rhyme or reason behind the designs of the original Allomancy symbols, and maybe he missed the beginning when we were talking about the tattoos. But I'll read his full comment, and you can maybe work your answers in. He says, I've always wondered if there was any rhyme or reason to designs of the original Allomancy symbols. Did the number of spikes signify anything? The direction they're pointing in, out, the number of dots, etc.?
No. For the most part. They are.
So there might be some.
Well, if I remember right, and I'm going to get this. So some of them have the dot inside the circle, some of them have the dot outside of the circle, and that signifies whether they're a pushing metal or a pulling metal.
Okay.
So that was one thing. That was one thing. Go ahead.
Shit, I was going to send people over to we have all the symbols on the dice at the Mistborn dice.
Right.
So they can check the Kickstarter page and just scroll down to where all the dice are, and they can check that.
Yeah.
So yeah, looks like the pulling are all on the outside and the pushing so far are all on the inside. So there we go.
Yeah. So that was one of the rhymes or reasons. The other thing too, though, is that those dots can move around. They are an alphabet, so you can use these as an alphabet to write things, and the placement of the dot will tell you where the vowel is that comes after it.
Okay. Can you give us an example?
So yeah. So like this one, I don't know if you can see. Yes, I have prototypes of the dice here.
So why don't you do this?
Can you see that? I don't know.
Which die are you doing?
So that is Duralumin. That's probably not the best one, but I know that
That's
one.
fine.
That's an S.
So do me a favor, stop sharing your screen for a second.
Oh yeah, you can't see that.
Yeah, but I can pull it up on mine. So you want Duralumin? All right.
See me now?
Yes, I can. So here,
Okay. And
I'll have
everybody
I'll have
can
to scroll
too.
through these, but let's see.
So if you do tin and Duralumin,
Oh, there we go, Duralumin. Okay.
So tin is the I. It looked like an I, so I assigned I to it. Plus, I thought it was cool. My name starts with an I, and I
So
wanted
is this 10?
tin is the letter for I.
Okay.
Duralumin is the letter for S. And
Okay.
the ones that are not vowels, you can move the dot around for different things. If you give me just a second, I can pull up what each one is signifies. Well, actually, I'm just going to do a plug here for some people I really like. That's the Badali people, Badali Jewelry. They do Mistborn rings. And if you go over there, you can tell them what phrase you want on the ring, and they will write it out. And you can see how the dots move around depending on what letter there is. So I think it's a really cool idea. I've got one that has my name on it. My wife has one with her name on it. But
I think I've got it here. So you've got this, right?
I can't see your screen, so I'm not sure what you're showing.
You cannot see my screen?
No, I see you.
Got it. I am sharing. Let's see. Share screens. Oh, okay. Start sharing. I wasn't sharing. All right. So I was showing this, but I also have.
Yeah. Oh, hi. Now
where
I
is
can
it?
see myself.
There we go. So this is what I have. Is
Yeah.
this
So I think that's accurate. I think that is probably what I provided Crafty.
I believe so. Yeah.
And so yeah, that's accurate, but there is a bit of change, like where the dot is can change what's going on with the letter.
Sure. So but you did say Duralumin is an S and tin
That is
is
an S.
an
But I
IE.
think you can throw the dot outside of it, and then it will make a different sound. And I can't remember.
Like a sh or something like that.
Or like it might go from sa to say.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, and if you don't change it, then it just acts. I think on Badali they're just transliterating it one to one. So.
Got it. And for the sake of, because I forgot to share my screen like a dum-dum, there's the tin die from the actual set that you were talking about. So now it's big for people to see. And
these dice are really cool. And I'm not just saying that because, we're doing this in conjunction with the Kickstarter, but I have them right here. And having metal dice, they're really cool.
What's your favorite one? I have a favorite. I'm wondering what yours is.
I don't know, because some of the ones that I have are prototypes.
So symbology-wise, I thought the tin showed up really well.
Yeah.
But I also
one
really
of my
like
symbols.
What's
Go
that?
ahead. You really like tin, and you really like.
So the one the bronze. I thought bronze turned out really well.
Yeah, I really like that one too.
Yeah. Okay, so I will cede the floor back if you want to share your screen again and show off some more stuff. I'm going to go and check the chat so that
So we were talking about how these symbols developed, and whoops, I just opened something. It's going to take forever. So I'm going to show you the beginnings of the Allomantic table of elements.
Oh, nice.
So there you go.
And there we are.
Obviously, the symbols are not all that cool yet. But this is where I was starting to kind of figure out, okay, we can do this. We can do an Allomantic table of elements. And this is really where I started trying to figure out, okay, some of these are push, some of these are pull. How do we fit this in? Do we use a diamond shape? And later on, I used the diamond on the ferrochem table.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out, and it says a lot about Brandon's magic system that I was able to take all of this and put it into a chart. And then Brandon and I worked back and forth trying to make sure that everything kind of fit in a certain this paradigm that we were working on. So yeah, it went from that to what I showed you here, and that's this was drawn on a Post-it note, and I'm like, and that's kind of where I was going with those symbols. I was thinking alchemical.
Zoom on that one a little bit. Let's make that one a little bit bigger for people to see.
And it's whoops. Kind of strange. I don't know. They look sort of alien to me, but there's some circle stuff going on.
Little crop circles, yeah.
Yeah, they look like little crop circles to me.
The left side of that looks like an eye looking at you.
Oh yeah, it does. Yeah. Well, there was for a while as I was working through the Mistborn, the tattoos for some of these guys that and I think I might have copied. There was a guy at work who was drawing all these face tattoos, and I might have looked at some of his and gotten some inspiration, especially on this one. He did a bunch of things. I was looking at his. What's that?
Is it possible there's a cultural reference that was inspirational for you?
Well, he was drawing Maori tattoos for a project.
Okay.
I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I just started looking at that for a while, but in the end, we never really canonized the tattoos.
Shadow Saber wants to know how it's possible to read Brandon's so atrocious handwriting, by the way.
I think
I'm not sure that's Brandon's. That might be your handwriting, right?
What? This is all my handwriting. Yeah, none of this none of this is Brandon's.
There we go.
So some interesting things going on here.
So what's going on with the vertical lines there? It kind of looks like a musical score almost.
Yeah, I think I was trying to standardize the shapes.
Okay.
Oh, that's after I'm going to show you the page where things started to really solidify. No, those are both Hero of Ages. There's a page here where you can totally tell that things started to click. So I had been drawing this weird eye symbol that I thought was so cool. That's not it. Here's some more of these guys. But here, you can see above this guy's head.
Mm-hmm. Kind of like a fire eagle.
There's like there's this weird eye symbol. Mm-hmm. You can see here I was looking at some Chinese stuff for a while.
It's almost the one you were just circling makes me think about the wax seals that a lot of noble houses would use to seal their communications.
Yeah.
They like press it into the wax.
Right. So you can see here above this guy's head, mm-hmm. There's this weird eye sort of symbol. And I kept going back to that for a while. But then I just didn't feel like I had hit on anything yet. And I was looking through reference online for Inquisitors, and I found this pile of rusty nails. And there was this bent rusty nail in this picture, and I thought, that looks really cool. And so I started drawing off of that. And you can see here, I have up here written in the top of my sketchbook, corroded rusty nails. And this particular one I'm circling right here is where I drew this rusty nail right there. And you can see then I was starting to look into these shapes. Here's another rusty nail type thing. And then these rusty nails started morphing into other things that are much more similar to where we're at right now. You can see some of here's that eye thing again that I kept trying to come back to, and it just never worked. But then on this side, we're starting to see some recognizable things. Like this one looks like it's going into bronze. This one I think might be gold or copper. Here is unmistakably Laurasium. Yeah, is this boring? Hopefully this isn't boring.
No, I don't think so.
You can see down here.
Let's ask the chat. Is this boring?
Here's a tiny sketch of Luthadel down here at the bottom, where I think this is where I had the idea to tell Brandon, what if we named the gates after the different metals?
Okay.
And we just named them after the first 8. So this is really where things started to solidify.
So Messy Desk answered your question. Said, I find this really interesting! Exclamation point. So I'm guessing that they're finding this enjoyable.
Cool. Well, thank you. Let's see. What else do we have here? You can see more of this stuff where now I'm playing with the shapes a bit more. These are more angular.
So what's interesting about the difference between the classic era Allomancy symbols and the Alloy of Law era ones is that when you get to Alloy of Law, the rusty nails become railroad spikes almost, right?
Yeah. Yep, they do. We codified that. We decided, okay, now they're turning these things into typefaces. They're turning them into fonts. We even have some that hopefully we'll use later in the 1980s era trilogy, era 3, where we've made them really thick. They're just different fonts too. We've been playing with different ideas of how would they use the Allomantic symbols as typefaces. Here's a fun thing, the Vin falling through the air. Here I'm working through all of the notes on trying to figure out, what's push what's pull, what's physical, what's mental. How can this all work together? This was early symbols again. They just weren't working though. One thing we almost went with was we tried to go with maybe the symbols as little illustrations like this. Like maybe this is Kelsier walking through the mists. But we threw that idea away. But it came back.
Well, so you mentioned the 80s trilogy, but I'm going to divert for a second because Paleo Crafter asked if you don't mind us asking Cosmere questions.
Sure.
While you're showing off all the gorgeous art. So the question is, an anonymous Chondro wanted me to ask you whether Naz was married. And you know how to pronounce the full name, Nazrilof.
Yeah, so
there's a debate, I guess.
We call him Naz, and his name is Nazrilof.
Okay.
And we're not ready to reveal whether he was married yet or not.
Fair enough.
Or if he still is married.
Or not.
So there are a lot of questions there. However, this is something that we are actively working on, is Naz's backstory and Chris's backstory right now. Actively working on that.
So before we move on this symbology and stuff, we got about 20 minutes left on the schedule. We can do as long as you want. I'm willing to stay, and I'm sure they are too. When you work with an outside person to do art, for instance, let's say for a book, or let's say when you're working on the video game, or if there's other things coming down the pike, is there do you have like a book Bible where you literally give them the stuff that you've already produced. Like you say, look, this is my map of X, or this is the way the works, or you kind of go, hey, here's what Vin has been for the last 10 years. So these are the things you can't change. Like, do you have guidance like that you give people?
Usually the guidance we give them is the words in the book. We sometimes give pictures and things reference. We did that for the cover for Oathbringer, where we provided reference of, here are some pictures of people who look kind of like Yasna that might work. And they were
I've seen a lot of companies do that, reference images.
Yeah. So we're doing that more and more. But at this point, I know that Magic the Gathering has these big look Bibles that they share with people, share with their artists. And those are really cool. And then they wind up turning them into these gorgeous art books that they've been putting out, and using a lot of the same stuff from there. And we haven't gotten quite to that point where it's like, you know what, this person has to look this particular way. We're moving that direction slowly, but that's because we're based on books. We want people to be able to imagine the characters as they would.
Sure.
We hesitate sometimes when it's like, okay, here's the look of what this person is. Even with the heralds that we are putting in at the end papers of the Stormlight books, we're careful to say that those paintings are somebody's interpretation. We like to think of these as in-world interpretations, and each of the artists who are painting them for us are maybe artists actually on Roshar, and they've painted these paintings that are hanging somewhere in some prince's palace or queen's palace, and they've got all of these pictures of the heralds. So we treat these as in-world artifacts. However, they were not painted from the real people that the heralds are. So it's more of the tradition of what this herald looks like.
But it's very interesting you say that, because you even said that and you showed us your early sketches of Vin look very much like what people made.
Mm-hmm.
So the words are descriptive enough that
usually
they're fairly clear.
I mean, there are some things that we have to canonize later, like the which ear is Vin's earring in? Well, it's not mentioned. It's not mentioned until we got to the Leatherbound books, and we said, we have to figure this out. Yeah. And then we made a few notes in the Leatherbound books. This is her left ear. So, but there are things that we run into like that. And the less, the more secondary the character is, usually the less words that are written about them. So we have there's more wiggle room on how to define them. More
so I interrupted you, and you were about to talk about this map scan you have on the screen. So let's do that for people.
Well, first off here, I was going to mention this symbol right here. You can see that this went on to inform the symbols that we use in the Stormlight archive. So even though we didn't use this in Mistborn, we used it in the Stormlight archive, and we actually even contemplated doing something similar like this for Zeth's symbol. And then his was the hardest one to get down. We have a lot of concept art for the Zeth symbol. So when I first started doing the map, I was reading the manuscript, making notes on the manuscript, drawing little Vins in the margins of the manuscript. And I realized I was just going to need to make a bigger drawing of Luthadel. And so this is one of the drawings that I did in a large sketchbook. In fact, I think this is 2 sketchbook pages.
Yeah, I can see the crease there.
Yeah, and that's taped together, I think. So these would probably be like 9x12 sketchbooks. So this was fairly large. But I'm starting to go off of, the topography. I'm drawing topography under there so that I could see maybe how the roads would go around the topography. There's no river on this one, you'll notice. There's like a stream or something going through. The river is not big enough. I see your
note. Yeah, it says Kenton Street up at the top and river. You just got a note there.
So this is just very early. I haven't even figured out the symbols yet because you can see here up in the corner, there's some weird symbol that we never
More
used.
Egyptian kind of looking
Yeah,
symbols in there.
there's some kind of
So
weird.
where's your house? Where you live? I want to stop by
I live here.
yeah, where would
I
you
have to
live
look
to know?
at, let's see, where would I want to live? Maybe where
Where would you live in reality?
I
Yeah.
live. Well, probably there's some slums over here.
There you go. I know, but you did say 10 is your you may have to go up to the top there near the 10 gate,
Oh, here's
right?
something funny. Um,
River of
here I'm still trying to.
Pirates.
Yeah, it's like I just have some kind of. We don't have I don't have a name for the river yet, right? So it's like, I'll just put a label here and call it something. The River of Crusty Pirates. I don't even know where that comes. Um, down in the corner here, unnamed slum. So
Sure. Nobody
that's.
nobody cares enough about it to name it.
No, I would love to live maybe in one of the places here where they have some of the estates.
Sure.
Luthadell's a rough place. I think it's best if you can live at one of the manor houses or something if you can help it.
So Paleocrafter has another question for you if you don't mind. Says,
Okay.
did you also go back to some of your steel alphabet designs when working on the glyphs in Stormlight? And because Little Blue was so great during Inktober, any sneak peek of monsters don't wear underpants you could give us?
Yeah. Yeah. I can give you a sneak peek of Monsters Don't Wear Underpants. Give me just a second here. So we didn't actually go back to this. I don't think I went back to the symbols from Mistborn for Stormlight at all. Brandon had a different thing in mind. Anything that looks similar is just because they were drawn by the same person. We had a completely different paradigm for the Stormlight symbols, and we wanted them to look very different from Mistborn. Let's see. I've got to go into. All right. So I've got it up on my screen, and I'm going to take a small.
Which one are you about to do? The steel alphabet design stuff or the monsters don't wear underpants?
We'll just do this for just a minute.
All right.
Just to, and I'll plug the book. It's up for pre-order on. You can find the link on my Twitter, or not my Twitter, on my Instagram. So it comes out in August. It's kind of a completely separate thing. There are almost no world hoppers in it. So here you go. This is kind of the colored style of things. There's the fish man. He does make an appearance. Thanks for asking about that. Okay.
So I'm going to link your Instagram in the chat so that people know what it is.
Okay, thanks.
All right, guys. Here's Isaac's Instagram there. Hopefully you got it right. Yep. IZYK Stewart. There we go.
Yep. Thanks. I can show you some things like the different. We'll get back to the symbols here. So once you saw, I showed you this one where we were starting to actually make some progress, and then I had to go through all of those pictures and figure out what are my favorite shapes. So I came up with what my favorite shapes were, and now we're starting to see things a little bit more like what we expect them to be.
Do me a favor and just leave that on one sketch there for a second while you can put stuff on. Yeah, just leave it on the side there so people can glance at it.
So Well, these are Photoshopped files, so I can't keep them up this way because they're not JPEGs. But you can see now. Then I went into Photoshop and Illustrator, and I started playing with these shapes. And they're not quite there yet. You can see we're
And I
using
see the dots are sometimes egg shaped, sometimes they're circles.
right. Some of the spikes are different, but I know at this point that the rusted bent nail has turned into a crescent.
Mm.
And I'm trying different things. And the things that were going through them have turned into actual spikes because that makes a lot of sense. And then once I had figured out what they should look like, then I thought, well, how should they appear? Should they be kind of gritty looking? And in the first versions of the hardcover, they are a little bit gritty looking. And then I refined them more to a point where they're more like this. But this one looks, I think the dot's a little big there as well. Oh, that's the same thing. Here we go. I took that paper and that's where I was starting to
Kind of draw over it digitally.
trying to figure out where it was going. But I mean, at that point, things progressed to where they're at now, which is this. And then this is pretty much where they were at. I've made some changes to make them more consistent between each other, but for the most part, this is where they're at. And then
I see the alphabet has changed a little too. Like so here, pewter is I and tin is K.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, things moved around a bit, so that's why when I have to look at the one that I gave Badali Jewelry because that's the one, and they actually I think give it out with each of the rings that they make, but it I think, don't quote me on that, but that's the correct one.
Have you ever considered making this into a true type font so that people could just type in symbology?
So we have one.
Oh,
We just haven't released it yet, and it's actually the alloy era that we have in the font because we needed it for the broadsheets that we do,
right.
In those books. So we actually have that as a true typed font that we use internally, but it hasn't ever been. We haven't gone through all the things that we need to do to make it like work nicely. So
what's going on with the dia, tia, nia, sia at the bottom there?
so this was based a little bit originally the sounds, and we kind of diverted from this direction. But so I was a missionary in the Philippines and I speak Tagalog, and I was really interested in the way that the old Tagalog had this symbol system, where they would put marks in different places depending on which vowels and things. And so I was actually playing those are Tagalog sounds right there that they use in their language, and I just threw those in there as extra letters. I didn't know what we were going to do yet, so that's just all. Those are the dia actually is ja, like a J sound.
Right.
Tia is cha, like a ch sound. Nya is a very, that's a we find that in Spanish, we find that in Tagalog, and then sha. So, but that we didn't really go down that path completely.
So it was just more experimentation.
That was more experimentation. You can see here there's a letter nung, which is another very common letter in Tagalog.
Yeah, my wife's Bulgarian, and they have a ts as a letter.
A
ch as a letter, and then they have like a virtually unpronounced vowel exhale thing that they do. It's Cyrillic, right? So it's a phonetic. No, what am I trying to say? Vocabulary. Somebody. Phonetic alphabet.
Phonetic, yeah.
Phonetic.
It's
very easy to learn.
I should learn Cyrillic sometime so I could at least look at those alphabets and sound things out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So we're running out of time, and Paleo's got a couple more questions. So I'm going to
great,
run through them because they're from the audience, and this is why we're
great. Yeah,
here. So
let's do question and answer for a
all
while.
right. So
Well,
Paleo says, "Do you have these symbols vectorized?" I can answer that. Yes, they are. Just asking because I recently re-vectorized them from the copper mine and wanted to know if there's any chance of you ever releasing them in that format.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
The more that I release things, the more we release things, the more we see things being copied online and having copyright infringement. People are going to do it anyway, but when there's slight differences, we can tell what the copyright infringed things are. And unfortunately, that's a thing. It's like whack-a-mole. Every time we release a new design, somebody somewhere is putting these up on shirts. So, it's I could go on a soapbox about this. We want to be as free as we can possibly be with the fans, because most fans wouldn't even dream of infringing on Brandon's copyrights. But there's that small minority of people that wind up doing it, and it causes us some grief.
Yeah.
So
the next one is, how did Lerasium get its symbol when it already was in use as A during the Final Empire? Similarly, who decided in world what symbol Harmonium gets? I guess they're asking which character in the world.
Well, I imagine with like a lot of symbols, these things grow organically in the world. With the alphabet, at some point, probably what happened is they had all of these symbols for the metals.
Mm-hmm.
And they started using them as an alphabet, and somebody along the line, whether it was under the Lord Ruler's, probably under the Lord Ruler's watchful eye, assigned symbols for the different letters.
So I'm going to ask, go ahead.
What's that?
I was going to say, go ahead and
okay.
Stop sharing your screen so you're on the screen. So
oh,
you're making gestures and nobody can see.
I'm making gestures and things.
Nobody
stop
can see
sharing.
There you go.
I'm back.
He's back.
Hi, guys. So somewhere along the line, they assigned all these symbols, and then as new metals were discovered, they just assigned symbols that hadn't been used for a metal. So probably what they did is they said, okay, we know there are this many metals. We'll assign these symbols to letters. But hey, we have a lot more letters than we know of allomantic metals, so we'll make more symbols. So they did. And then as they found more allomantically charged metals, then they would assign them the next one in line. So I imagine if we see more metals in the future in the books, that the letters that don't have metals associated with them will get assigned to metals. But that's what happened with Lerasium. What's that?
I said, there's a tease.
Yeah.
This is probably the most important question we've received all morning. So and I think it'd probably be good to end with this.
Okay.
It says, where's the weirdest place you've gotten a cupcake?
That from... I'm wondering if I know that.
I have no idea why that was going to be the one, but it seems like a good, nice note.
I was in New York in March, and there was... and a friend of ours there said, hey, there's this cool cupcake place. And so we went to this cupcake place at like 11 o'clock at night in an apartment building. And it was like a cupcake speakeasy where you had to know the code to get into the building.
A little slide thing.
Yeah, almost. I mean, you had to like type it in, and then they let you in. And then we went up this old kind of rickety elevator that I was sort of fearing for my life. And then we went through this hallway, and seriously, in a room the size of a closet is this cupcake bakery where they baked them somewhere else, and then they brought them here, and you just had to know about this place. And so our friend is a local, and he told us about it. So we went to this cupcake speakeasy, got cupcakes, and then went to a Subway station and ate them. And they were good cupcakes, but that is the weirdest place I've ever gotten a cupcake.
The cupcake speakeasy in New York. I got it.
Yep.
I like it.
I don't even think that they exist anymore. So
Well, Isaac, thank you so much for talking to us
yeah,
about
no problem.
your work with Dragonsteel, working with Brandon, showing us some of the art that you've developed and the work you've done on the symbols for the dice, because we couldn't make the dice if you didn't make the symbols.
Well, I think
So
it's really cool. Thanks for making dice.
awesome, guys. Well, I'm going to be putting the recording of this up uh, eventually as soon as
Okay.
I can grab it.
Sounds good.
And I will talk to you later, man. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for showing up.
And we're not recording or streaming anymore.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just say thank you and let you get back to what it is that you need to